If you want to say it's not about such things, it's about my people, right or wrong, okay, well, I would have to call into question whether they really are your people if they don't care about their own existence and think that steps taken to preserve their existence and sovereignty are hateful and bigoted, and you're demonic for even proposing such things. In the political conflict in the United States, the functional battle lines are not strictly racial. Though racial issues constitute locales of conflict, the lines are Republican-Democrat Party, binary, a true dichotomy.
You'll be lucky if there's ever a Republican president ever again. The Republican Party is finished. Maybe not now, maybe not for another 10 years, but the outcome is no longer in doubt. Blacks vote their race. They will vote against whites. And the racial demographics assure that the United States will ultimately be finished as a first world country. And the
one thing I said in the video I took down was that I'm just sick of sticking up for a people that won't stick up for themselves, that doesn't care about itself. People in Ireland are so far gone that they will consider a black guy in Dublin who hates the Irish for being racist. They'll figure this guy to be more Irish than their flesh and blood ancestors living in the United States, because the black guy speaks with an Irish accent and has a sticker placed on him by the government that he's Irish. It's that retarded. When you break down white people, even in the United States, you see massive differences between European ethnicities in terms of party registration. Differences of roughly the same magnitude as that between whites and Hispanics and Asians. In terms of income, at the extreme ends, gaps between European ethnic groups within the United States are of similar magnitude as that between whites and Hispanics, or even whites and blacks. The point of this isn't fuck you for being poor, it's just to highlight that there are really profound differences within the greater European population.
France does not exist. England does not exist. Canada does not exist. Germany does not exist. Poland does not exist. Russia does not exist except as a legal and linguistic fiction.
Political party support, the heritability inferred from twin studies is only 0.3 as opposed to 0.8 for IQ. But the parent-offspring correlation for political party support is around 0.8, meaning that, unlike IQ, parents have a huge impact on political party support of their offspring. So, Sean just plugged in the Breeders' equation and estimated regression values on political views for Asians, blacks, and Hispanics and whites based on a heritability of 0.3. And he found that in this worst case scenario, Asians and Hispanics who rate themselves as 5 or 6 on a 1 to 6 point scale of how Republican they are, with 6 being the most Republican, they will have offspring who remain Republican into the next generation. And this is assuming zero parental environmental effects. So this is a kind of absolute worst case scenario. This is about the maximum that they would regress. So the flight risk of non-white conservatives or non-whites who hold quote-unquote our values or right-wing values, the risk of that flying is greatly exaggerated. And so when you look at the reality of white people, they have really shitty views on just about every issue, and they have almost no racial solidarity, and they don't seem to care too much about whether or not they exist or are sovereign as a racial group. And this is just the reality. And trying to say that this is some false reality created by some corruption, I think that's just delusional. To think that, well, the true white people aren't like this. The true white people have been corrupted by the Jew, and that's why they're like this. And I think that's a very easy cop-out, instead of just recognizing that you're not into white people, you're into the ideal of. Disparity of reaction between when you say this place is too Arab versus this place is too white, the disparity of reaction, that's the conditioning. It's not just a buzz phrase. You've probably been conditioned, not rationally persuaded, not overtly bullied into thinking this way, but subtly conditioned to think that it's okay to say that a place is too white. If someone came in and said this place is too Jewish, alarm bells would come off. But no, too white, that's okay, right? If they say, oh, this place is too black, what's wrong with you? Right? Oh, but too white, that's okay. You weren't bullied into thinking this way. You weren't rationally persuaded into thinking this way. It was slowly sort of conditioned into thinking this way. And this reaction, this conditioned reaction is, say it with me, anti-white. Yes, this is a double standard against whites. That is a product of conditioning. Okay, so let's put it together here. This is anti-white conditioning. Anti-white. True. Conditioning. True. I'm not a white nationalist. I don't think of myself as a civic nationalist, but if you want to call me that, sure, whatever. But when I hear I'm putting forth a proposition state versus an American white nationalist who says he supports a real flesh and blood group of people, a real nation, well, I think U.S. conservative is more of a real nation than U.S. whites are. U.S. conservatives are deeply territorial, work constantly for the supremacy of their beliefs, are increasingly intolerant of mixed ethnicity marriages. You know, in the case of the conservatives and liberals mixing, right? The ethnicity of the conservatives and the ethnicity of the liberals mixing.
The other races will not integrate and will not become one with us because the barriers there are biological. They are inherent, they are real, they are of the base, not mere superstructure. There are no black French. There are black people who speak the French language. Conservatives. Your race is your nation, and your blood is your uniform. There is no America. There are no Americans. There is no treason.